First question I get asked in most social interactions is if I have kids. And I do have kids, but I find it odd that that's the first thing that we say to a person that we're just meeting. Do you have kids? And I know generally it's just like a curiosity thing, a way to strike up a conversation, but we tie so many things into whether or not people have kids. There are so many different judgments we like to place. There are so many different rules that we like to make sure those random strangers follow. Because the follow-up question is always, oh, so they're in school then? No, they're not. And people are always shocked when I say that we homeschool. Like, oh my gosh, homeschooling, that sounds so hard. I don't think I could do that. And it is hard in its own way, just like parenting in general is hard. It's just an extension of all of the parenting that everyone else does. It just doesn't stop when they walk up the door at 8 a.m. It's all the time. And I think a lot of people overcomplicate the idea of homeschooling because they're picturing like school at home and all of the assignments and all of the marking and all of the learning that they never really learned all that well. It didn't really stick. They don't really remember it, and it feels like drudgery to try and figure it out again. And that's where I ask, how relevant is the information being taught in school if most adults don't even think that they can teach it to their children because they didn't grasp it well enough, or they haven't used it in so long? Why are we forcing our kids to learn it? Why does it matter? We spend a lot of time, and I think we do it out of love and wanting them to survive and seeing this as the way that we survived, so it works, right? It works. But we're wrapped up into this idea that this is what people do. This is what you have to do. You have to send your kids to school, and if you don't send them to school, you have to bring school home. And people aren't stopping to question why we're teaching kids these specific things in school. Because if you look around, there are way more topics of conversation than the ones that come up in school. There are way more relevant pools of information than the ones they teach in school. And we spend a lot of time in school steering us to be the kinds of adults that the adults want to see, I guess. Ones that uphold the paradigm that they uphold, I suppose, is what it really comes down to. That's what it seems like to me anyway. You follow the plan to reinforce the plan, and if the plan doesn't work, well, you're the broken one. And look at the rates that kids are being medicated at in schools. You can look up research that shows that kids should be spending most of their days moving, out in nature, active, engaging in their environment, and yet we're still putting them in desks. We're talking about obesity in children and how it's such a huge problem, and it's because they're on those video games. Well, maybe that's part of it, but if you spend the whole day talking them into sitting in a chair, that's a huge chunk of their time that they would have rather spent playing, being active, getting that exercise that everybody says that they need. And we feel like we need to poke and prod and trim and cut and shame them into these little tiny molds of expectation of what they should be. We tell them what subjects to take and try to support their interests, but sometimes we let our fear get the best of us, our fear that they won't be able to make it in the world chasing that dream, so we try to talk them into a more reasonable one. But what if living somebody else's idea of a good thing isn't really reasonable? What if it's just dismissive? What if every time you tried to create something from yourself, somebody else told you what you should be doing instead? How long would you remain that creative person? Or would you start to slowly lock yourself away to wait for a time when it's okay to really be you and maybe you never really feel like that time comes. It seems tragic to me that we're forcing people through this, and when kids are getting bullied at school and they're like breaking down crying because they don't want to go, and we talk them into going anyway. Be brave, you can face it. What if I don't want to face it? What if I want to embrace myself and do my thing? We're not allowed to do that? Or it's crazy too, because that's what a lot of homeschoolers are doing. They're just following where their passions lead them, providing opportunities to do fun and interesting things, being with their children so that they can speak to them and learn their thought processes and help them find their way in whatever unique path that might be. What if homeschooling wasn't so hard? What if we got together with other parents who homeschool and figured out activities that we could do with each other? Because anything you do together is educational. And if the lessons that they're teaching in school are half as important as they say they are, they will be relevant in everyday life. You will see them on your adventures, in your kitchen, cooking food, at the grocery store, paying for things, trying to get a business going so that you can do the fun, exciting things that cost money. That's valid learning for kids too, learning that they can do what speaks to their heart, that their time is their own, that it's their responsibility to make the changes that they want to see in their lives. But they can't outsource that to somebody else. Nobody else is going to change it for them. It's up to you to change your life. Yeah, I don't really know what else to add to that, but I would really like to get a homeschooled community together that is more focused on the things we can make and the things we can build than the subjects that are listed on a school syllabus. So if you're interested in that kind of community, give me a shout, because I'd really love to build it. Right here where I am, I'll open up my garage and we can stock it full of all the supplies we might want to need to make all the things that we want to make, and we can work together to make that happen. And if having an income is what's keeping you from homeschooling your kids, it's that 9-to-5 job is just another part of that paradigm where we send our kids to school, of that training that we receive there, that you have to be at your desk for this many hours a day for it to count. And there are millions of people stepping away from that and stepping into their passions and taking that leap and doing the things that they want to do with their life. And they're finding amazing abundance rolling in from all over the place. And they have the time to raise their kids the way they want to. There are possibilities available to us now that weren't available even 20 years ago, before the internet was what it is now, before YouTube had tutorials for every little thing you could possibly want to do. But the world is changing. Maybe we'd be a lot happier if we changed with it.